Welcome back to second time this year to our PR and marketing briefing. Pleasure to do this with you. And it's a pleasure to have you all attending. I know people are still logging on, but we can start, I think, with just a general slow introduction. I know we have an hour slotted for tonight, but I think we're going to try to get everything in within 40 minutes. I know you guys are busy. This is really a webinar for you guys to understand, pull back the curtain a little bit about the way Tearsheet runs, both editorially and from our program's point of view, what conferences we have set up for this year, and just to get a little bit excited about what we have in store. Is that right, Aaron?
That's right. I'm excited about 2022.
Yeah, it's been a crazy year. So let's start. Little bit about what we're going to be working on today. We're going to give you our editorial calendar. At the end, we'll also talk a little bit about how we like to be pitched and maybe some tips on how to get your stories in front of us, both in front of me and our reporters. We get pitched, and we'll talk about this at the end of the webinar. But we get dozens of pitches every day, so we do have some tips on how to stand out. We will talk about our 2022 event and program calendar. I can't even believe we're even talking about 2022 yet. I mean, I think I'm still in 1970s. And we'll give tips both on my side of the fence, on the editorial side, on Aaron's side of the fence, the program side, how to work with Tearsheet organically and as a partner. I think you'll find this useful. So a little bit about Tearsheet. For those of you who don't know, those of you who do, you've heard this spiel before. Tearsheet is a source of everything you need to know about convergence of financial services and technology. And this word convergence is really important for us. We did a conference this year called Convergence, but we're continuing to explore themes of how technology and new ecosystems that are being built and powered by technology are converging with the traditional financial industry. And that's maybe different from some other media organizations, but it's that convergence that we'd like to report on. We'll talk more about that as we get into it. But first, let's talk a little bit about our readership. So as you can see here, this is just a sampling of the types of people who read Tearsheet. We have, from the C-suite to heads of marketing, product, and digital at some of the largest organizations in the world, to product people, management, and founders of venture-backed fintech companies. So we're read widely by the incumbent industry and by the upstart industry. And so we don't see them as two separate worlds. We don't see one as like, the future is through cooperation and through partnership. And so we definitely see the worlds, as I said, converging again. There's that word. So that's our readership sampling. And in terms of the types of people we get on our shows, we get the Harit Talwars, who's recently stepped down from Goldman, but we get the people making and plotting the future of finance. These are people at the highest levels in their organizations. These are people who are hands-on in terms of building products, making decisions, and planning for the future. This is a smattering, and if you go to our website, you can click on podcasts, and you can see we're actually, I meant to tell you today, Aaron, we're almost at our 500th podcast, so we're about to hit that within the next couple of weeks.
Woohoo!
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
A little bit about audience data. I'd love for you to chime in here too, Aaron, but as you can see, we believe that our content, and this is what we talk to our writers about, is making it readable so that the most senior people in an organization would find it valuable, but also simple enough and straightforward enough that all levels within an organization can consume our types of content. So as you can see here, we have a lot of senior management here, product people, marketing people, primarily in financial services. Fintech is a big cohort of our readership. We also have the ecosystem around fintech that reads us pretty widely. We're read by, I would say, almost all of the venture firms that have either a fintech practice or dedicated fintech funds. They read us widely, as well as all the consultancies that do work in fintech. So in financial services. And as you can see on the seniority level, we have C-level people, and we also have other decision makers within the company. So our goal, we're not designed, I think, for entry level people, like people first making their first steps into fintech or financial services. But I do believe that our content is applicable to everybody within an organization.
Yeah, and a lot of times we see this kind of this blurry line between financial services and fintechs. Like, so for example, at our last conference, The Big Bang Theory, which, by the way, had over 1,000 people, almost 1,000 people came to it. The head of Square's banking, basically announced that Square is now a bank. And so, like, actually, I haven't even updated the slide yet. Square is still within that financial technology space. So, like, but there's a lot of companies that are banks are actually starting to offer technology to other challenger banks, and a lot of fintechs are becoming de facto banks. So it's kind of like I think that the lines are blurring more and more over there.
Yeah.
And I just want to echo also when it comes to investors, like, they play they're a really relatively small part of our audience, but it's basically everyone that any company that is looking for venture backing within the financial service or fintech space could get. This is the audience you're looking for.
Absolutely. And those investors, which also include private equity, they listen to our podcast. They're subscribers to our newsletters, all of the newsletters. And so we do have a robust investor community along with us. What I'm remiss in mentioning at the beginning is that if you do have questions for either me or for Aaron, you can submit that in the Q&A button in your webinar panel, and we'll answer those as they come up. This is really an unscripted kind of conversation about what Tearsheet does. And if you have questions that come up, we'd be happy to answer them.
Yep. Okay. Maybe just to talk a little bit about roles. So sometimes people say, well, what's management, versus, the other things. I think, like, management is kind of like everything else, right? So, like, we could talk about, like, really a lot of the content that, and Zack could talk more to this, but, like, we're very interested in, what are the strategies and what are the types of partnerships, that companies within our space are you doing in order to, evolve and get ahead and so on. And, the same thing goes for the other categories that you see here. We have the Acquire conference, and we'll talk about that soon. So there's a very important, understanding of, like, what, trying to understand, like, what is the positioning from a marketing and customer acquisition and retention perspective, but then there's also a lot of C-level executives like Harit Talwar. He's not only, like, if we went back a few slides, that those aren't only our interviewees, but they actually also, are consumers. They consume our content. And so we have a lot of these, like, C-level or chairman types and of the board as well, super influential. And that's within that management 37%.
Great. Appreciate that. So moving into the meat, are there any questions, by the way, on what we just dealt with? If you do, ask it through the Q&A button in your webinar panel. But that's a good segue. Aaron gave me a good segue to move into our editorial calendar. And along with the editorial calendar, I guess I will talk a bit about the type of content that we do produce, because the editorial calendar reflects that. One of the things we'll get to later on is our calendar, our event calendar schedule as well. And so a lot of our editorial content is woven in and out of those different events. We like to sort of preface and build up energy and information and content ahead of these conferences, so that we end up hitting a conference with a deep exploration of the topics at hand. So if you see January and February, these are our 2 months of really talking about, and this is my background, so I love this piece, but the marketing, branding, and customer journey piece. So Tearsheet really is predicated on the product and business side of financial services, whether it's a fintech or a traditional financial institution. We talk little about the back office. We talk a little bit about cybersecurity. Really, our stories are where products and banks and brands meet customers. So those are our best types of stories. And in January and February, we're really focusing on marketing, right? Like what channels are top marketers or the top firms using? What's working for them? What does their portfolio look like in terms of spend? What do campaigns look like? We look under the hood at different marketing campaigns about how financial services firms are communicating to their audiences, how they bring on new customers, what are they doing to service them. So the first 2 months of the year are focused on that. And you'll see that'll when we get to the event calendar a little bit later, that leads into our Acquire conference, as Aaron sort of teased out already. And our Acquire conference is really focused on the same themes: marketing, branding, customer journey, anything that touches the customer. Let's see, we got a question here. Okay. In terms of March to April, this is the mainstreaming of digital assets. And this is a topic that we really picked up steam in 2021. And again, our approach to all new technologies is not technology for technology's sake. It's how it's influencing the traditional financial ecosystem, or even call it just the financial ecosystem. We call this mainstreaming. So if you look at crypto and digital assets, the blockchain, stuff like that, in the first few years of its inception, it was really for enthusiasts and people that were very much focused on that. And as we've seen this year, more than in any other year previously, traditional financial institutions start to partner with these types of companies, and these companies going directly to consumer. As the technology became easier and easier for an average person to open up an account, there's not really an account structure, but to buy, sell, hold cryptocurrency, or to stake coin and to get a high yield savings account out of it. These things have made their way into just at the beginning stages of being mainstream. And so that's what March and April is going to be about. And really our coverage is not about the trading of coins, because I think that's just a simple early use case of what blockchain and crypto is all about. But moving more into DeFi and how some of these products will replace and actually create new types of financial products going forward. And then May and June, this is 3 years running. We've taken these 2 months to really focus on financial data, right? So we have financial data aggregation. We have account connection and sharing of non-credentialed data, tokenized data. And so we're really focused on, and I think we do a really good job at Tearsheet, probably as good, if not better, than any other media firm out there, focusing on that layer. It's maybe it's the plumbing layer, but it is an important, crucial layer for modern financial services in terms of sharing data between the holders of all holders of financial data, consumers, banks sharing their information with a fintech that the consumer wants to use. And so doing that in a structured, safe, secure, and private way is super important for whatever's going to happen in the future. We can call that open finance or whatever term you want to talk about. But May and June are really focused on those topics. Now, what's important here is in most cases, we're really focused on the financial institution, from their perspective. Well, let me restate that. Our stories are written from the perspective of a financial institution and less so from a vendor. So, and we'll get to this at the end. So if you do represent a vendor, if you work for a vendor or you're a PR firm representing a vendor, we do very few stories focused on the vendor. But a better story for us would be how a financial institution has used the vendor to accomplish X or to do Y. And so this financial data may be an outlier in that sense, but for the most part, we are focused on companies that actually touch money at the end of the day, however you want to define money. So that's the first half of the year. And then the second half of the year, July through August. Now, if you've been paying attention, we just recently launched a Green Finance newsletter, which is being spearheaded by two people on my team. Rebecca launched it, and Yulia now is the editor on top of that. This is a burgeoning field and one that we think is going to be a very important one going forward. We just had the COP26 conference, and a lot of commitments made in the traditional financial services arena to committing to being friendlier and more sensible around the environment. We're seeing on the fintech side a lot of technology companies step in to try to come up with solutions, whether that's carbon offsets or I don't know, planting trees. There are a lot of different ways to do it, or even putting sort of screens on top of lending portfolios to check for exposure to carbonized types of projects. Green finance is going to be big going forward, and more so, consumers are saying that they want to do business with companies that align with their values, and this is becoming a big one. So we're going to be dedicating some time to that. Definitely, if you're interested in that topic, subscribe to our newsletter on the website. We'll be building out that content base as well in the year ahead. September through October, Convergence and Challenger Bank. So we just did a conference. We called it Convergence. It was sponsored by a great sponsor of ours, Publicis Sapient, that's been a great partner in helping us to build out some of this new content, both at the event level and on the site. This idea of convergence, whether you're a fintech startup that emerged from the unbundling of a bank and you did something really well, like opening up savings accounts or checking accounts, or you're a large bank who is just beginning to sort of invest in a small business lending practice. What's happening is we're seeing both the fintechs and the traditional banks kind of converge. We called it, the emergence of the super apps. That's probably a little bit dramatic. There aren't really any super apps in fintech, as we know, but there is this idea that whether you started from an unbundling point of view or you started in a bundled bank, at the end of the day, these firms are competing for all of their customers' wallets, and whether they do that themselves or they do that through partnerships, they want to play a much bigger role in their customers' financial lives. And so, September and October really focuses on that. That could be, that can be a challenger bank that's moving into crypto trading, or it could be an investment platform that's moving into banking as well. We approach it from a lot of different sides, and it's a fascinating trend because we're seeing these firms that really kind of evolve and mature. And again, as we'll see in our event calendar, a lot of these 2 months pieces of the editorial calendar do correlate to some events that we're running alongside these things. And then lastly, November, December, embedded finance. This is the concept that banking extends beyond the four walls of a bank into consumers and businesses' favorite apps. And so banking becomes something you do and something you don't, not somewhere you go. It's embedded in the software and the tools that people use every day. We combined this year, actually, just 2 weeks ago, both our Challenger Bank conference with our embedded finance conference. We called it the Big Bank Theory. It was a fantastic success. That was the one Aaron was referring to in his introductory remarks. We had close to 1,000 people register for that. Great feedback. 3 days, I'm still recovering, 3 days of fantastic interviews and heads of product and heads of companies that are really bringing both the branded experience and the non-branded experience into the future. And so that's really important. And in December, we use that month to kind of take stock of the year behind us that just was and look forward a little bit into the trends for 2023. We're starting to put together those stories now for this year that was 2021. So if you have an executive or you want to put forth some trends, we'll be doing that in payments, in banking, in challenger banks. Payments and challenger banks. Those are the two that we're working on right now. So that's it for the editorial calendar for 2022. Aaron, do you have anything you want to add to that, or?
No, but this is really great. I'm really excited, and I'm actually excited to look at some of the other things that we're going to be talking about today, because I think that the editorial calendar is almost like the base for what we build throughout like our programs and the different content that we create all around the editorial calendar, whether it's podcasts and newsletters, it's articles, and then we have conferences, and all of it kind of really ties very tightly together. One thing I did want to mention is that although this is in general the editorial calendar, obviously there's a lot of coverage throughout the year on all of these topics, right? So it's not you're not only going to see green finance in July and August. You're going to see it throughout the year, or challenges or convergence. So if you have a story that you feel is relevant, right now, So pitch it to us right now, right? Like when I speak to customers or our sponsors, as we call them, when I speak to sponsors or prospective sponsors, I always want to mention that like we engage with you from an editorial side. We engage with you as if that's all we can get from you, right? Like that we'll have a relationship based on potential earned opportunities. And when it comes to a sponsored side, we engage with you as if that's the only thing that matters. There's no, you can't buy yourself into to earned opportunities. And at the same time, there's room for both, and there's a lot of importance. So we'll get to that soon. But
that's a good point, Aaron. And I should say also the inverse. The inverse is true as well. Like even though July and August are focused on green finance, we're reporting on lots of different things during that month. It just means that we have sort of an editorial focus on those topics those 2 months.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move into programs a little bit. And so I'm Zack Miller, and I'm the editor-in-chief at Tearsheet. Joining me is Aaron Singer, our CEO, and who runs our programs. And I think that puzzle piece thing at the top of the slide actually talks about how editorial and programs can work together, as Aaron just alluded to. I'll talk a little bit about some of the programs that we run, even though that's Aaron's side of the house. The content very much dovetails into the quality and the focus that we use on the editorial side of the table. We've got podcast series. I love podcasts. I think we were one of the first firms to get into podcasting. As I mentioned, we're up to almost our 500th episode. We have close to or over 1 million subscribers now to the podcast. We have one of the longest running and most respected podcasts in the space. We're going to be rolling out more podcasts this year on the editorial side. There are also opportunities we'll get to sponsor series of your own that we would produce in-house for your brand. We've got White.
One of the things I want to mention about the podcast, that's something a little different. So like if you look at our podcast up until recently, like really every day it's like a surprise. What are we going to hear about today? But as we've matured and as we've really made our mark on a lot of these different areas, whether it's embedded or challengers or data, or now it's going to be green finance and cryptocurrencies, we're going to start to have podcast series. So this is content that and maybe Zack, you could talk a little bit more about like the concept behind it, and then of course those things I could talk about the possibility of sponsoring, like if you are interested in sponsoring a data series or so on. But what's the idea behind a series?
So the idea behind a series is to get multiple voices and multiple perspectives into a particular topic. So we ran a series for one of our sponsors this year, Paxos, who's a trust bank that's behind crypto trading products at companies like Revolut and PayPal. And so we did a 6-part series that was really dove into looking at how a bank should approach crypto trading, some of the environmental concerns around crypto trading. And it was a compact end-to-end turnkey series that we produced for this client, and is some of the best producing content that we had those months that we produced that. So it's really sort of, as opposed to our regular podcasts, our organic podcasts, which are really just interviews with executives, a podcast series enables us to go deeper and sort of and defined with a script into how a product or a technology is impacting an industry, and how banks and financial institutions can take advantage of that product.
Great, and so maybe this is a good place also to say, as this is like the edge between what Zack has been talking about on the editorial side and what we work on with my teams on sponsored opportunities. Both of them are really important. And so, but I think that obviously having organic coverage is super valuable, and you should continue to nurture those relationships with Zack and his team. And towards the end of this conference, and we have about 15 minutes to go, we'll talk about, how you can do that. But from a perspective of how do we engage on a regular basis with a sponsor, we're happy, and we've worked with a lot of companies like Visa and MX, and there's a number of other wonderful companies that we've worked with and strategized and came up with a plan that goes across the year. Let's say 2021. Now we're going into 2022. How can we get you up and front and center in front of our audience in a very subtle kind of way, right? Like obviously we always say that you're a sponsor, but we want to make sure that we're all about thought leadership, right? We're not like we're not interested in having 1 million people coming to us. We're interested in really creating that thought leadership, and we do that with our sponsors as well, right? It's not going to be commercially and salesy on any level. It's going to be very much, aligning yourself with the kind of content that's really, really interesting to this really influential readership.
That's a great point, Aaron. So sitting between the editorial team that I run and the programs team that Aaron runs is the Tearsheet Content Studio, which produces all this content. So it has creative types, it has editorial types, it has marketing types to think about how best this content can be assimilated within Tearsheet's core base in a way that's best positioned for your target readers. So these things are very self-explanatory. Most of them, we can produce podcasts in-house. We've got a whole studio and voice talent that can produce that for you, from script all the way to publication. White papers, newsletters, guides. Our guides we produce after every conference, which is a really in-depth guide to some of the trends that are happening in the sectors that we're covering. WTF guides are what they sound like. A WTF, we use this term, we have a whole series around it about new terms or new technologies that are coming in that a company may want to own. It could be a terminology or a technology term that they want to own, where we kind of go into it from a very explanatory point of view of like, what do these technologies mean, how they're impacting us. It's really kind of like a beginner's guide to really understand and go deep into some of these things. We also have buyer's guides, which are created as if you're for buyers moving into a particular technology. So these are for B2B buyers, right? So if you're looking at buying or investing in some type of data aggregation platform, what should you be looking for? And we do objective research on that. And we have research reports. We have our own expert panels and people that have raised their hand to answer surveys from us. And so we can actually produce firsthand research within our own platform.
I see that we have a question.
Yep.
So it's from Brian Chevalier Jordan. What's the breakdown between fintech and non-fintech readers? Non-fintech meaning e-commerce, SaaS, et cetera, kind of companies.
Wow, that's a really good one. And I think we're going to go back and get more research on this, because what we're finding as well is a lot of small businesses are reading us that are looking for help with financial technologies and financial tools. Like, for example, Visa, a lot of their buying work that works with Tearsheet targets this audience. So we do have a lot of e-commerce companies. We have all these companies in there. I don't have the exact breakdown here. I don't want to misspeak here.
Okay. And by the way, that Brian is from Bond. So thank you for the question, Brian.
Great. And what's new for 2022? I think one of the things we just talked about, we alluded to now, is podcast series. So Tearsheet has its own flagship podcast, which is called the Tearsheet Podcast. I'm the host. That's the one with 1 million subscribers to it. And we're going to be rolling out our own podcast. We have one in Challenger Banking, and we'll have one, A Day in the Life series, which interviews executives and how they run their day, sort of a behind the scenes thing, a look at just cool people that are making things happen. We'll be doing one on payments, and those are organic in-house produced ones. And what we're going to start doing is working with companies that want to launch their own podcast, and not a one-on-one interview type thing like the format that we use for our Tearsheet podcast, but a storytelling one, a narrative one, like one you would hear on NPR. So we can do an entire season from soup to nuts, from ideation to script writing to production, in-house for your brand. You would work with us basically to help ideate the content, but we would produce everything else and help distribute it through our podcast channels. And I think this is an opportunity for brands that are thinking about podcasts. I know a lot of the conversations we have with potential sponsors, I know Aaron tells me this, but is that, the measure of podcasting is from a leads point of view is very hard. It's very hard to judge, right? If you're a lead gen person, a podcast doesn't necessarily develop leads. But I can tell you, having done this for 10 years, that is one of the most powerful ways to get in front of your customers. It does have challenges in terms of metrics, but somebody putting their earbuds in and listening to you 10 times a year with deep, thoughtful content that's impactful for them and for your listeners and their lives, that's very, very powerful. And that's something that Tearsheet wants to be able to power for your brand.
And by the way, that's how we built our business. Tearsheet started off first and foremost as a podcast. We took that podcast, we transcribed it, that became content. So there's such a huge value to podcasts. And the next slide
I know this gets to what Aaron's excited about.
Yeah, this is the next one I'm really excited about. So this is like kind of like when we sat back and I see. I'm sorry about the fonts are a little wonky here, but when we take a step back, a lot of times when you're in the weeds, it's hard to see the value of everything coming together. We sat with one of our customers, Ulysses Partners, and so this is how this came about. And they said, we were looking at like maybe doing some byloads or maybe like a guide and a report, and they're working on this report. I won't spill the beans on what it is. And as we started to talk, and we would love to do this with all of our clients and all of our prospect, our partners. We realized that this report could actually be really, really valuable, and we would work in conjunction with them to develop this report as a WTF series of, so you take the report and now how do we break this down into 4 or 5 or however many? It's usually about 4 or 5 articles that come out, every few weeks. Another, the second part of the series, the third part of the series, and then. But before we do the articles, we take this report and we interview Ulysses and some of their customers on video and on our podcast. And it goes out on video. It goes out on our podcast. It's transcribed. It's turned into a series of articles, and all that stuff is pointing to this report that's downloadable. So you're able to, and it goes out on our newsletters feed. It goes out, on the podcast fair and so on. So like you're really like creating this really rich content from all different levels, and you're able to kind of engage with customers however they want to consume that content. And ultimately it drives everyone to that, to being able to read that report. There's one thing also that I wanted to say about the downloads of content. We have such amazing relationships over the years. Zack and his team has built such incredible relationships, really, with the thought leaders. So, again, like the C-level executives, of the tier 1, the top 5 banks and the top 50 banks, and and all of the challenger banks, and so on and so forth. And so we have so much of the conversations that go on, not only go on in the consuming of the content, directly from our different channels, but it's also directly through our relationships. So very, very often something comes out and we're distributing it to a number of people that have asked for it on the highest levels of this industry. So, whatever you do, and this is a great example of it, your content really goes very, very far. And this is something that we're able to, pull together for our sponsors, because it takes a lot of work to put something like this together. And what we feel, the last thing I want to say is, and maybe you could talk to this a little more, Zack, like this to us, if it's done right, we don't want it to be a spiel. We don't want it to be like a commercial. What we really want it to be is valuable content, and some of the most valuable content that we've actually printed was content that was created with our sponsors. And with that, I want to hand it over to you.
Yeah, that's a good point, Aaron. And having been the CMO of a fintech company, I know how important it is to maximize the investment in content. So something like that we're talking about here, the Omni-Media content series, helps to recycle that content. So you put the investment and time and money into building the content initially up front, but then it gets reproduced into multiple formats that we do through our studio. That gives you really the maximized leverage out of that initial content investment. So this is super important for that, and you get multi-channel, multi-media type exposure in that. So I'm excited about this as well. Let's move on to Aaron did a really good job of sort of bucketing Sorry.
Yeah, I mean you could go through this quickly. I'll let you talk on this. Yeah.
So I mean, we have sponsored content. So this is on the partner side. Obviously, we have the earned media on my side, which is our reported content. On the sponsored side, we've got sponsored content, which is podcasts. So that means either inserting your brand into a Tearsheet existing podcast, or creating your own podcast, which we can do for you in our studio. Creating white papers, bylines, newsletters, all the standard stuff that you expect from a top media firm. And then we have these cyclical type things with events and guides and awards. Aaron's team has done a great job of around the calendar and around our events, creating multiple opportunities to interact with our audience. So each event has a guide associated to it where we go deep dive into the content at the event. It comes out after the event. And we have awards programs around our flagship events as well. So I know Aaron loves talking about awards. I'll let you talk about awards, Aaron. Why are awards important?
And by the way, guys, just stick on. I see that we're getting close to the end, but there's still a lot to talk about. If you want to go to the next slides, I could say that we've developed this real. There's something unique about our positioning within the industry that when the top financial institutions look to who it is that we are recognizing in Tearsheet as the most important companies within the particular niche verticals, whether it's data companies and there's a number of just looking at the participants here, there's a number of companies that are represented here right on this little webinar that have won awards, and it really makes a very big impact on your bottom line. So this is, by the way, not a pitch. I definitely recommend, and we'll talk a little bit more as we go about on how to go about doing awards, but it's a really valuable part of a good way to engage with us and in our audience is to apply for these awards, and then we recognize them, and we come later on. The award winners are incredible, and there's the finalists, and even people that haven't won or haven't been finalists, but we thought, what, these guys were awesome, and they deserve to have honorable mentions, and they go into our guides. So awards is a really great way, and they're inexpensive. They're just a few $100 to apply. Really great way to get your message out. To celebrate what it is, all the hard work that you're doing, and that's really important because we work hard. But we also need to be celebrated. We have to be recognized for the great work that we do in this industry. So this is an opportunity to do it, and in a very influential platform.
And I think the awards programs give a differentiation. I know that a lot of our award winners put it on their websites, put it in their signature range. It shows that amongst thousands of other fintech companies, Tearsheet has identified you guys as being really special, and I think that goes a long way.
Yeah.
So Q1 conference, Acquire. We talked a little bit about this earlier. This is our conference that's all about acquiring and servicing customers. It's marketing campaigns, it's customer acquisition strategies, it's channel work, it's branding, it's all that kind of stuff. Even call centers, right? So even fintechs that started as being digital only are now adding in human and hybrid services. So how is that working? How are the top firms doing that? What are those challenges? And so we definitely talk about all that at the Acquire conference. And one thing that ties into the awards, we also have Acquire awards as well.
Yeah. And one thing I want to add for this and for all the conferences. So again, there's a split, right? So if you're one of the ways to get into this, to speak at an Acquire conference or the other conferences is to pitch your speaking ideas to Zack's team, editorial@tearsheet.co. Another opportunity, but Zack said dozens. I've seen his email inbox. He gets about 300 emails a day, on various pitches, right? So, and definitely there's I wouldn't want to discourage you from pitching him. You should pitch him, especially if you have a good story to tell. So, if you feel that you could, and you look at every conference, we have, all different size, speakers there. We have the largest, the last conference we had Bank of America, C-level executives from, the tier 1 banks, but we also have smaller institutions as well, or some, nobody really early stage, but definitely people that have really shown their legs and we feel confident that they can do it. And a lot of those leads came in through pitching us. Another way, though, that you can be part of this conference is by sponsoring the conference. And, these conferences, especially the online ones, it's open to the industry. So the way that we could put on these conferences is by getting sponsors. And in return, we give you a lot of opportunity within the sponsorship, whether it's speaking engagements. We give you, depending on the level of sponsorship, we give you some leads, although that's not obviously the reason. This is all about thought leadership and a lot of edification going up to and during and after the conference. So, again, from both angles. I'm not doing a hard pitch here, but if you're interested in being part of this, and we had a company, BurgoPack, that was a choir conference sponsor last year, they got tremendous results from that. And so if you're interested, whether you're a software company that's selling into, or some kind of marketing firms, you want to be a sponsor, that's wonderful, and obviously, Zack could talk a little bit more about the kinds of people as we go along that would be interesting to hear pitches from.
Sure, and I'll do that as we make it through. I just want to make some headway, make some hay. Damn, that's hot. I love this idea, the Bank Chain Conference. This is the idea of taking blockchain and banking and putting it together. This is the Tearsheet branded sort of DeFi meets old school banking conference. I'm excited about this one. We're going to be doing this one in person. So this past year, we moved all of our conferences completely virtual. That was a continuation of 2020 when COVID hit. We are slowly going back into, and now with this new strain, it is confusing things a bit. But we are committed to doing a couple in-person events next year, the Bank Chain being one of them. And in terms of how we identify the right types of speakers, we do try to get a diverse panel. So we are committed to doing that. So that goes in, that's part of the calculus, but we really want people with interesting stories to tell, good storytellers, very dynamic speakers, people who have built things, people who can get the audience excited about what they're doing. These are people who are experienced standing in front of a crowd. Our in-person events, by the way, we use a TED Talk style. So it's a 25 minutes, a very short session. You'll see we go very quickly through the conference, have a lot of speakers. But for 25 minutes, a speaker gets up on stage, is limited to 6 or fewer slides, and owns the audience during that time. So it is an incredible opportunity to convey information and to have the audience learn alongside you. And so Bank Chain is going to be our mid-spring conference, May 24th. Moving on to Q3, we have Data Day. This will be the third year I think we've done this conference, Aaron. This is all about, it is about data aggregation, it's about data sharing, it's about open finance, it's about alternative data. How are firms using data to power the next generation of financial services? This is deeply industry oriented. This is not our biggest conference, but is very, very much focused on this industry that's helping to power the plumbing of modern financial services, and super important. So this is one that's dear to my heart. This is one that we helped to create around one of our first sponsors, MX. And it's one that I think that's really important to continue telling these stories about the enablement of future development within the industry.
And I just wanted to mention Elizabeth O'Neill asked on the previous conference, Bank Chain. It's going to be in New York, so look forward to that in the spring.
That's a good point. To date, we've done all of our conferences in New York. We'll keep you posted over time as COVID abates and we're able to expand more into in-person events. We'll be doing them different places throughout the U.S. and hopefully internationally. So Data Day is online. Next one, Green Banking. This will be an online conference as well. This will be the first time we run this. We have different formats. So like the Big Bank Theory, which you'll see in a slide later, that was a 3-day event online. Green Banking is a new event. We'll do that a 1-day event. And this is really to help explore both the way incumbent banks are addressing and changing, evolving their approach towards the environment and the earth. And it's about fintech tools that are coming in to help some of those institutions make sense of that and to aid them on that way. So Green Banking, this will be the first time we do it, and I'm excited about this as well. And that'll be in September. We'll give you
this will be virtual. I see it doesn't say here virtual, but it'll be virtual. Exactly.
And then really our flagship conference, the Big Bank Theory. This was actually, Aaron came up with the great name, and this was a convergence, a confluence of our 3 other conferences that we did last year. We were planning to do these in person, and we were running around the calendar, and the Delta variant showed up, and we were back and forth. Finally, we said, let's take our Convergence conference, our Embedded conference, and our Challengers conference and put them all together. It worked wonderfully. The content actually makes a lot of sense to do this as a single event. We've got embedded content. These are the platforms powering next generation of financial services. Outside of banks, these are brands. And the Challengers Conference, this is all about digital banking. And so those are really two sides of the same coin. We'll be doing this live and in person in November in New York City, most likely, right?
No, I was hoping Detroit.
Oh yeah. Okay. So we're in a process now of scouting out facilities and stuff like that. We'll let you know exactly when that is, but this will be in November 2022. So we're a little ways off.
Yeah. And yes. By the way, Detroit, Zack is he has roots in Detroit. It's Motown, but it's also Zacktown.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll let you know where that is. But start planning for that now, because this is going to be a big conference. This will be a multi-day conference as well. And our awards programs. This is something that's really important. They sit alongside our conferences, our major conferences. We won't be doing one. We might do them for all these conferences that we just mentioned now. But certainly for the ones we've done in the past, this is a way for brands to apply for awards. We'll get our awards program up, I think, by the end of this year. I think you'll be able to see everything we've got going.
I absolutely want to have these for our new bank chain and green banking. I mean, we have to celebrate the most incredible firms that are taking those plunges. Both of them are very risky and very rewarding, and I think that we need to recognize that. So we'll take this offline, but definitely want to have awards for those.
Absolutely. So I think we did a better job this year of launching these more than 8 weeks out prior to the conference, where you have time to be able to apply for them. There's a registration form and a submission form, so it does take some thought. I can say that it does matter the way your form. We do combine sort of our industry knowledge. Our judges decide on that, but the quality of the submission does matter. And so if you have questions about that, I would definitely reach out. But it is worth spending time creating a good submission and positioning yourself as such. And you can see the brands that we've had here. Some of the best brands in finance have won Tearsheet awards in the past.
And some of these brands weren't even so well known when they won them. I think Current was relatively new to the market, and we have others that like Bond won, and they're really hot right now. But they weren't so known beforehand. Yeah. And I also although I'm not part of the judging panel, I do get to peek at some of these. And we tend to like we said before, when you're trying to pitch a story as if like a commercial, it comes across in the way that you're applying for these awards. So what I really encourage is and maybe we can be we could talk about good ways to position yourself when you're applying for these awards. There's a lot of power in this, and we'll guide you along the way to put out your best foot forward to get these awards.
So we're getting to the end. I'm sorry we ran over. We just got really excited talking about this. But on the organic side, how to pitch us, I think building relationships with me or with our reporters is important. I know it's hard. Aaron is right. I definitely understated how many emails I get a day. I get about 300. And so it is hard to rise above the noise, but I definitely, building a relationship with me helps. But also positioning the story in a way that fits along the lines of what other Tearsheet stories we're writing about. It's very clear the style and format that we use online. So read a few of our articles. You can understand sort of the lens through which we view the market. Which is if you're representing a vendor, it's definitely not vendor centric. It's the problem that the financial institutions that you're working with are solving for. You happen to play a role in that. And so those are the way we position those types of stories and make it be something that fits in. If it's a cybersecurity story, we're not likely to write about it. If it's about a small bank that just took on a new core provider, probably not really going to write about it. Trend pieces are really important for us. Pieces that are associated with data. If you have a survey or some type of firsthand information that you've come up with, that's important for us. It's an opportunity for you to be creative. We really want, the better you can tell your stories, the better we can tell the stories. And so we're not looking for news. We're not, and that's important to say, we're not a news outlet per se. You can see that we're not publishing under embargo primarily. We are not focused on being first to a story. A lot of times I tell our reporters, take a few days, take a few weeks, see how the dust settles. Let's look at a news type story, but let's look behind the scenes. What happened? Is it working? Does it make sense? Does it fit into a bigger trend? And so those are the types of stories that we really like. So we're not necessarily first to market, but we'd rather take the inside baseball story, really understand how the sausage is made, to combine two bad metaphors. But that's what we do. And so I can say helping us do that, walk us through that. So if you're a vendor, setting up conversations with a couple of your clients is so helpful for us, because we're going to tell the story from your client's point of view, not necessarily from your point of view. You will be written into the story and we'll include you as part of the story, but you won't be the focus or the locus of the story. And then paid opportunities. Do you want to talk about, Aaron, some takeaways there?
Sure. I mean, for those companies that Zack wouldn't necessarily organically write about, there are a lot of opportunities and ways to position you within, sponsored opportunities that you could be within, really fit well within our content. Like we were speaking to a company that we're right now about to sign a contract with, a company that's really is a cyber security company, but they're looking at different elements within payments. And so they're sponsoring payment content, which fits really well with what they do. We wouldn't necessarily write about them, but they're definitely, interested in the people that are interested in payments. And we work with you, right? Like we want to make sure that that we understand your business and that you understand. And there's another company that is basically going to be outsourcing most of their marketing to us, and so not only using leveraging Tearsheet Studios. If you're a small company, you don't have a big staff of marketing people, or we can create that content for you, whether written or graphically or audio and visual, and then you can repurpose that content not only with us, but to the wider universe, whether it's to your leads or to even other media sites. So we're happy to work with you, and so definitely reach out to us. You can reach out to me, Aaron, at tearsheet.co, or sales at tearsheet.co. And when it comes again to reaching out to Zack, definitely editorial at tearsheet.co is a great way to reach him and the editorial team. And we're excited. I want to thank everyone for staying on. Like almost all of you stayed on the entire time. And it's really great to see. If you have any questions, you can ask it now. We have 8 more minutes to the end of the hour, or you can send us emails, to Aaron or to Zack at tearsheet.co. And we're happy to answer those questions. Oh, and we have a question pop up. What is it, Zack?
Thank you both. Really appreciate your time. Well, we appreciate your time. Our marketing and PR contacts are the community around Tearsheet are very important for us. And so we're doing this for you guys as well. You guys provide an incredibly important role in our audience and in the community. And we want to hear from you. We want to do this better. So your feedback is super important.
Yeah. We just got a few other things coming in. Can you repeat the Tearsheet editorial email? Yes. It's editorial@tearsheet.co. So Tearsheet is .co. Editorial@tearsheet.co. That's from Alexandra Kadis. And then Amy Dalkoff asked, can you please speak to different Tearsheet reporters' beats? Great question.
Yes. So we have people on Green Finance beat. We now have a beat that we're going to be creating this year that focuses on publicly traded fintech companies or financial services companies. We have a payments beat. We have a challenger bank beat. We have an embedded finance beat, and we have associated newsletters along with all of these. I can give you the names of the people who are associated with each, but I think that would be confusing to do right now. I think what I'd like to do is maybe send this presentation out to everyone who's attended, and I can include that information in there.
Sure. And there's one more question that came in from Deidre Hudson. And then there's another one from Alexis Castorina. So Deidre asked, I missed a part about what you were talking about, the type of stories you're interested in. Can you go into a little more details around that? So we actually are recording this. That was at the beginning of this session. And we absolutely, Deidre, we're going to send this, we'll send you a link to that recording, and you can see it's at the beginning of part. And Alexis, assuming the client owns the content, Tearsheet Studios would create in perpetuity. And that's a very good question. So it depends, right? Like if we create the content, we'll talk about it. We're open to different options, but you definitely have, you sponsored that content, and you definitely have rights to it in perpetuity. And we're also open to other things. Like, for example, if we create a podcast series, Tearsheet Studios works with you to create your podcast series or your content that you're using on other things. You own it. We have the rights to distribute it, but you own it. If we're creating it as Tearsheet stuff, like we could create like buyer's guides, Tearsheet sponsored by you, that's ours, but you have full distribution rights. So we're happy to work in both ways.
Right. That's an important point. It depends whether it's a Tearsheet branded or a client branded product. And
we do both. We recommend a lot, as much as possible, to do a lot of Tearsheet branded content, because we really do have that amazing objective reputation around. So again, those are the kinds of things that we work individually with each of you, and we'll do it.
Wendy asked Aaron if you would also be able to send a media kit around with byline pricing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I'm happy to send. First of all, I could send this over, and what I prefer Wendy to do, like our pricing is not such a secret, but a lot of times I think that a lot of good conversations and questions come around when we have one-on-one conversations. So if there's interest in potentially engaging for sponsored content, definitely reach out to me, Aaron at Tearsheet.co. Either me or one of the people on the marketing team. We'll be happy to go through a presentation and answer any questions you have, and you'll see all of the pricing in front of you. And then Amy Dalkov, thank you for that, Wendy. Amy Dalkov asked, does Tearsheet accept bylines to contributed content on an earned basis? And the answer is, great question. The answer is no. All of our content is either created by the Tearsheet team, or it's our sponsors, like a sponsor, and then we'll publish sponsored content. It'll say sponsored on it. And then you can send us things that you've created. And by the way, we're also happy to give you feedback as you're creating that content. It's a little more cost effective if you create it than if we do it. We put in a lot of effort, and you get ours. It's also cost effective. But if you create it yourself, we're happy to give you some feedback just to make sure that it's tweaked, because we again want it to be really valuable to our audience. So thank you for that question as well.
And I think it's worth to mention, I mentioned this earlier, but we've had some byline content that our clients produced that was some of our best performing content for the month that it was published. So, getting that match of sponsored content in the voice and in the perspective of a Tearsheet reader is super important and very valuable. So absolutely.
And you're in good company. I mean, we have, I had mentioned, MX. Visa, they send us bylines that they write, and they're a big client of ours. They send us bylines that they write. We also write bylines for them, so custom bylines or sponsor bylines. Both of them really, really go well, and these are real thought leadership pieces. You want to ask yourself, why would Visa want to run bylines? What do they need? Thought leadership, and the answer is yes, right? From the biggest companies out there, and Visa is definitely one of the biggest financial institutions, down to really companies that are trying to find their legs and really using this to really start building their brand. These are companies that have turned to us and have successfully run marketing programs with us.
I think that's a wrap, huh?
That's a wrap. I love you, buddy. And I love you guys all for coming. Thank you for joining us. It's really great to take an hour out of your time for us. Thank you. We're really grateful for that.
And we'll do this again, in June sometime as well. We'd like to do this twice a year to give a kind of view. You give a 6-month sort of editorial view on what's happening. We did tease out the rest of the year, but we'd like to update mid-year as well, just to give you guys an opportunity of what we're working on. So I appreciate your time and your focus.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and look forward to hearing from you soon.
Good night.
Good night.